Anyway, we are in the book of Amos. All right, Father, bless the lesson and encourage the saints as a result of it now. May we learn something as a result of it. All right, some of this is just facts. Facts. Mainly is Sunday school, presenting a lot of facts. Contains 9 chapters. Amos means bearer or burden. And the idea is he has a burden to preach. So it's the difference between an occupation and a calling as far as preaching is concerned. I always said that you want to be God called, not
Man called.
mama called.
Self-called.
Man called, mama, we say mama called. You're going to follow in your father's footsteps.
Family business.
Say that.
It's a family business.
It becomes, it's all right to do the family business, but not when it's the Lord's work and turn it into the family business. Now, if you were called, that's one thing. A lot of them are called because their parents were missionaries, they become missionaries. Well, why would they become missionaries? Do they have a burden? They could. Do they have a burden? Or is it because this is the business they know and understand? They know, they understand, and they're good at it. They may be very, very good at it. Not to say they shouldn't do it, but you want to make sure that you do have that burden. The lad over here said something to me the other day. He said, 3 or 4 days ago, he said, well, I want to learn the piano in 2 years. After I'm done with the piano, then I'm going to take up the banjo and learn that. So it shows, according to number 2, he has what? The B word. What is that? He has a burden. It's like this. You have to want this. You have to want it. What is it you desire to do? You know, whatever it is you desire to do, then you seek that out. Anybody have a specific desire?
Hand out tracts.
And I'm not saying it has to be spiritual. Hand out tracts. Anybody else have a burden?
To have my own business.
To have your own business.
I've had my own business in the past.
And you didn't have a belly full of it, so you want a little more.
That's all I heard.
What else do you have a burden for?
Love.
Pardon?
Love.
Oh, you desire to have it or desire to give it? Have it. Well, a burden to do something. What? Oh, to get married? All right.
No,
It's a once in a lifetime thing. It's supposed to be.
That is.
Yeah. Well, what do you have a burden to do? I mean, shoot a gun, go to the moon, go sailing, go fishing. What you have a burden for?
Be in a band.
Say that again?
Be in a band.
Oh, to be in a band.
Those are my life. Those are my life.
Well, I always say this. I would never play it at the ground round. My dad did. He said, quit. And I said, I get paid. He said, you can't get paid to do that. Basically, he was telling me that I'm lousy. And I said, I could get paid. I'll prove it to you. I'll go get a job.
It's a matter of taste.
So I went and, well, no, I played his music. And, but he called me a pounder. I was a pounder. I don't know. But I went and got a job. I had a burden to do it.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, if you don't apply, doesn't mean you're the best. If you don't apply, it's not going to happen. You have to apply. What else could you have a burden to do? People have burdens.
Have a family?
Having a family.
That's part of getting married.
Everybody does have a family.
Where-
And you could make for reconciliation if the family is kaput state. You could always make an effort to unkaput stay that. Nobody else here has a burden for anything? Nobody?
Record Sunday school.
You know what? I never asked you. I never suggested it. I never made the effort to encourage somebody to do it. You came and asked me, I remember the sermon too. You came and asked me, do you mind if I record this and film it? And I said no, and you've been filming ever since. Does anybody remember the sermon?
It was a drawing.
And I had two boards. I set up I had the one board here and I had the dry erase board here. And I said in engineering, and I really didn't have a burden for engineering. It was just the expected thing. You were supposed to go to engineering school. So all I did is I drew a circle, a triangle, rectangle, a square, and I made little drawings. And we had gotten that as a class. It was one of my favorite professors. It was an older man, and all the young engineers hated him. They just hated him. But it reminded me I thought he was like my grandfather. And it was the coolest class. He said, well, make something out of that. I didn't know what to do, but some of the guys really had as I looked at what they did, I said, wow, that's ingenious. They were putting the parts, the shapes together to build something. I just stuck it together like, it wasn't even Tinker Toys. It was the dumbest thing. I don't know what I was doing. So, but anyway, as you put it together, I said, well, when you put this together, I think it was Luke that shouted out. What did he shout out? I said, what is this? What did you say?
A house?
You said it's a house. See, and you knew right away. You knew right away. Anyway, Amos has a burden. A burden to preach. It's written about 760 BC. It's during the reigns of Uzziah, Jeroboam, in verse 1. And so it is given that Uzziah, king of Judah, in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Josiah, king of Israel. So you can date it that way, historically. He prophesies to both the north and to the southern kingdom. So the north kingdom is made up of how many tribes?
10. 2. Whatever.
What did I say, the north or the south? The north. The north is made up of how many? 10. How many is the, yeah. You said that. How many is the south then? 2. And who are those 2? Judah and
Israel? No.
You're right. It is. Yeah. Well, see, that's a product of whose class? Not my class. Of Tammy's class. Of Judah and Benjamin. And then the other 10 tribes. And Benjamin was made up of very few people because they went out and killed almost all the Benjamites. They were all killed. Most of them. And they had and so that they were not diminishing to build that up. Remember, Saul says he's from the least tribes because there's not too many. How did they get a wife?
Stole from the other tribes.
Yeah, they stole from the other. They went to the annual.
Say the August dance?
Yeah, I want to say, what do you? The harvest dance. The hoedown. They went to the hoedown. They hid in the cornfield and then they would run out there and grab a wife, and that's how they kept from being diminished, and so on. A good Western early movie there. The north and south. He was a herdsman and a cultivator of sycamore trees. Let's just go ahead and turn there. Amos 7. Yeah, this is the one that has the chapel in it. 7. verses 14 and 15. Then answered Amos and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son, but I was a herdsman and gatherer of sycamore fruit. The Lord took me as I followed the flock. And the Lord said unto me, go prophesy unto my people Israel. What other people did he take like that? He didn't go to be trained. He didn't go to Elisha's school where there were 50 people in the school. Who else did he call like that? Elisha's one of them. What was Elisha doing?
He was running a plow.
He was running a plow made up of how many?
24 oxen.
Was it 24? That's 24 mule team borax. That's,
12 yokes.
does it say? I think you're right. It could be 24 mule team borax. Yeah. What was that? Is that Death Valley days?
Yeah.
Death Valley days. And so you had 24, and what did he do? The moment he was called, he butchers them out, sacrifices them, and he goes for it. He quit his job. It meant he didn't want to plow anymore. He was done.
So they had a steak and hamburger party?
They had a steak and a hamburger party. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a long, big party.
I tell the kids, I said, well, you're going to have to eat liver sausage. I don't know if they ate the liver too or not. I know the Antichrist looketh into the liver. But anybody here ever have, what did I call it? Liver sausage. Goose liver sausage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's another unfortunate lad. I would actually have a taste for that. It would come and go. Otherwise, mostly it was what you just did, Rich. I have to agree.
My grandmother made me eat it
Yeah.
as a child.
Goose liver, but they call it goose liver and they call it liver sausage. And it's in a casing. And you smear it on there.
Oh, catfish.
You're not far off.
A little bit of ketchup makes the goose liver go down.
But do they even sell it anymore?
Yeah.
They do. Well, it doesn't seem very popular amongst millennials. Liver sausage. All right, a herdsman. He was a herdsman and a cultivator. And Amos lived in Tekoa. It was 12 miles from Jerusalem due south. A native of Judah. If you have maps, I have it marked as map 6. And in my maps, we haven't looked at these maps in a long, long time. And what difference does it make? It's on the map. Today, I'm telling you, man, they have these ads for guys like me. He brings his maps. He brings his maps. What else? He brings the music on cassette tapes. And he brings what? No, he didn't bring a flashlight. He brings maps. And he says, well, I've got it on my screen here, Dad. And he brings, the last one is the cassette tapes. What else does he bring? He said, Dad, you don't need any of that stuff. What was the other thing he brought?
A radio?
No, he brought cassette tapes.
A record player?
No, assuming that he had a cassette player in the car. He said, no, I have it all here on my phone. Something like that. And there was something else he brings.
TV.
No, it was really funny, though. It's a funny ad.
I've seen the ad like
I forget what they're selling. They're selling something.
phones.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, that's where he's from. He was commanded to prophesy. If we're back here to Amos again, it's in verse 15, it says, and the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said unto me, go prophesy unto my people Israel. So he is definitely God called. God called. if I was to ask the wife, when was the very first time that I said to myself, obviously I didn't say it out loud, you know, I could do that. You recall when that was? You don't remember when it was? The very first time we walked into Bible Believers. We walked in there and we heard a missionary. Where was he from? He was from the Pacific Rim. Mrs. T. You remember where he was from? I can't remember now. It was a missionary. It wasn't the preacher. And I said, you know, I can do this. And that settled it. And then I wasn't called until we heard Jim McGahee. And that's when I surrendered to preach. That had to be about 5 years later. But it was, when I heard that, I said, you know, I can do that. And I felt the urge. I felt the urge to do that. And the very first time I ever experienced that I could really recall that really affected me was when I was at college. And there were a couple of students, they would stand up and go at it with the professor. I never saw anything like that. They would get up there and they would go to it, man, because some of these professors were vile and just off the wall. And they would stand up and argue with them in class. And I thought, wow, that really impressed me. And then I did have some professors that were, I don't know if they were saved or not, but when they did their calculus and when they produced their equations for physics, for the constant, they wouldn't use a C for, they wouldn't use the C for a constant. You know what the C, yeah, the what? No, they didn't use the speed of light. No, the C, it's x squared plus x plus, it's the derivatives. It's either the integration way or the backwards, the derivative. And you have the C in there. That's got to be zeroed out. The one prop, he said, we're not going to call it C, we're going to give it what letter? G. And he called it God. That really impressed me. He started with G, he integrated it, and then he integrated it again. And he came up with all the formulas. That just boggled my mind. It boggled my mind, and he did that. And I think it was Physics 3. I never forgot that. Some kind of Christian. And it was the book, it was Physics 1 and Physics 2. If you dropped it and it fell on your foot, you'd break it. I think we had 5 quarters in that book. It was like 2 years in there. And then we had advanced physics. But he started with God, and it just blew me away. I never saw that. I didn't have people that would express that publicly. Yes?
Dick, I heard a story about a Catholic priest who, if you got all the answers right, you still only got 99%. Because only God is perfect.
Say that again?
If you ace the test,
yeah,
you still only got 99% because only God is perfect.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, man. Man, I sat amongst guys that they wouldn't take the prerequisite. They wouldn't take a machine analysis 1 and 2, and then machine design. There's machine analysis 1 and 2, and then there's machine design 1 and 2. They would skip those, and if the machine design was offered, they would take that. But you needed the 2 prerequisites. They would ace it. I was out in left field. I mean, I'd be getting a C or a B. They're getting straight A's, perfect papers. And then the one kid ended up being the state, the highest score for the state, for Ohio. When we all took the test, some of these guys were just, they had brains coming out of their ears. I know I didn't. Anyway, he was commanded to prophesy, and he was not trained. He was not trained. He preached partly in Bethel. And Bethel is spoken of quite often. It is, Bethel would be, let's see here, in where the chapel is, in verse 10, then Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent to Jeroboam, king of Israel, saying, Amos has conspired against thee in the midst of the house of Israel. The land is not able to bear all his words. Basically what he's saying, Amos, you know, you're a nice guy, but if you don't mind, will you go preach somewhere else? The clergy wanted him out. When Roman Catholics get saved, a lot of times they don't know what to do. If they stay in the church physically, where do they then meet? In our traditional Catholic church, where do they meet? You see, in Bible times, they met in the temple until the priest got them and said, out of here. They would kick them out. In a Catholic church, when Catholics get saved, where do they end up going?
In the basement.
They end up going in the basement. What instrument do they pull out?
Guitar.
They pull out their guitars and they start strumming Kumbaya. They're going at it, whatever they're doing, because they don't know exactly what to do. But they know that something has happened. They got saved. They're now gathering, and they're starting homeschooling, and they're all chattering, and they're talking amongst and they don't know what to do. And then they send a priest down there to try to control it all. And they have these different masses to try. And then if they don't want to do mass, you know what those priests are going to do? You know, it's been nice knowing you. You better go find another place. Yes. Well, that's what they did with Amos. They said, you know, you need to go preach somewhere else. Yes.
After I got saved, it was January 28th, and when I went to Easter Mass, which is like 3 months later, still going to Catholic Church, they decided to baptize a baby during halftime at the Mass, and in my spirit was so offended because I knew that this was wrong. They're going to tell that kid that he's become a child of God because they sprinkle him with water.
Oh, I know.
And then when he acts like a sinner, a lost man, people are going to send him to the psychiatrist to get him straightened out. I walked up, not saying a word, and left. I figured that it was the Holy Spirit telling me, your time is up. Go be a Christian now.
Well, here it is. Go to Amos, this next one, Amos 4:4. He preached partly in Bethel, and that's where he's at, and where the chapel shows up. He says, come to Bethel and transgress. So how do you know the church is transgressing now? According to Matthew 13, at the end of the age. There's two examples that are given. The church is filled with what? There's
Wolves.
birds. We call it the Tennessee bird walk, a bunch of dirty birds. And then it's also filled with what? With the three measures.
Leaven.
It's filled with leaven. We have long been there.
They don't endure sound doctrine.
And they don't endure sound doctrine. One time, Pastor Thompson, he got mad. This would be a Sunday night. He was hot. He said, I'd rather preach to 100 people that love Jesus than to 2,000 people who could care less. Do you remember him saying that? Ooh, he was hot. He was hot. But everybody kept coming, you know.
Yeah, I should listen to him on the radio.
He would be talking about, he'd be on visitation, just like it was when he started, when it was just an infant church, and he'd be driving home and singing away and just having a good old time. Some things just never change. But that's where the church is at. It's just filled with it. I know this. The wife and I can't. We can't sit through it. it's like this, these television my sister's trying to encourage me to watch. What does she want me to watch? You gotta watch the, what do they call the first Christians? The disciples. Is it the disciples? Oh, the Chosen. Is that a movie or something?
Yeah.
It's a series. All right, why won't I watch it?
It's full of false doctrine.
The moment that's on there, I hate it. I cannot watch it. I have to turn it off. It's full of false doctrine. They're not quoting the King James Bible. And if you read the Bible, they are filling so much in between the lines. I don't know where they're making this stuff up. They've got to create this in some human mind to come up with this story. It's not biblical. I mean, you could read through the Bible faster than that Chosen. I entertain my sister, and I say, oh, well, you know, that's nice. I just changed the subject. I'm trying to win her over. She's been calling me and thanking me, and we sent her the ads and all, and she watched them, and I think it was she showed me that she had watched it, but I can't watch that stuff. It just turns me off.
It's a product of the Counter-Reformation.
Yeah, where they get this stuff, it just drives me nuts. Back here to Genesis 12:8. Going back to Bethel. Now, if that Chosen helps my sister, well, glory to God. I hope she gets something out of it. 12:8. Where are we at here? Verse 8. And removing thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hay on the east. And there he built an altar unto the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. I think that's where Abram first calls upon the name of the Lord, was at Bethel. I think that's what we preach. Chapter 13, 1 through 4. Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him unto the south. He was rich in cattle. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being rich. Nothing wrong with having a lot of money. All right? So when is it evil? When is it evil? I can't hear. When you love it. Can poor people love money? And poor people can love money. David was rich. Solomon was rich. Abraham was rich. They were, you call it filthy rich. They had money. Lots of it. There's nothing wrong with having money. And it's not dependent upon what you do with it. It depends if you love it or not. The love of money is the what? Root of all evil. Evil. What are the ads about? What is a television ad about on the TV? What's their goal? Their goal is to make money. And they're willing to spend money to get you to buy whatever it is they're selling. Whatever it is they're selling that you don't need. I always said to the wife, if they have to rely on us for the world to go round, the world would be bankrupt tomorrow. Today they would be bankrupt. I mean, they're not going to Google Prime and have an exchange of dollars. This stuff never stops. It never stops. And then where do they end up bringing this money business in? Where does it end up? It ends up in the church. We would have people coming here to do and to conduct business in the church. And every time they do that, I say, you conduct that business out there in the parking lot. Out with you. Out with that. You conduct your business. Whatever it is you are trying to conjure up here, you have to go elsewhere. Yes, I see that. And so you have to go elsewhere to do that and create that. All right. And let's go now to back here to Amos 7:13. It only occurs one time in the Bible, and that's the word chapel. Verse 13, but prophesy not again anymore at Bethel, for it is the king's chapel and it is the king's court. It's not a positive look on the chapel. I mean, that's not an upbeat verse, and so it always just boggles my mind why in these churches they would have a separate room, or they call their church the chapel. It just can someone explain that to me? Why would they pick that? It would be like you have a son. Well, what is it you don't want to call your son? Give him a name. Would you want to call him Satan? Hello, Satan. Would you name him Satan if it was a girl? What name are you going to avoid? Jezebel. You're going to avoid, you wouldn't name her Jezebel. Well, why do you call your church the chapel when it's a negative? I don't understand that.
It's less inoffensive than the word church to the world.
Well, I think then the pastor's he's not just a few rocks short. He's a whole truckload short of a full load. Yeah, the hospital has a chapel. Yeah, you walk into any of these hospitals, there's a little room, they call it the chapel. Yeah, they probably do.
And any religion can have a chapel.
Any what?
Any religion can have a chapel.
Yeah, even the devils. The chapel. It's just amazing me. And Amaziah, he is the priest, he resists Amos. And so I was asking questions, and I was learning a lot by listening to the Almost Christian radio station, and I was getting info. And so the priest resisted me. And then what did the priest finally do? He excommunicated me. He would not permit me to take communion. And in the end, that was a big favor that he did me. You know, he helped push me out. And anyway, we were well on our way. So Amaziah the priest, he resists Amos. He predicted an earthquake. 5:8. He is not Nostradamus. And all that hocus pocus.
Karnak the Magnificent.
Yeah, whatever. Seek him that maketh the 7 stars in Orion, and turneth the shadow of death into the morning, and maketh the day dark with night, that calleth for the waters of the sea, and poureth them out upon the face of the earth. The Lord is his name. Wait a minute. I said turn to Amos. What did I tell? 5:8. Well, I don't see an earthquake there. 6:11. Let's see where that is. 6:11. Oh, the Lord commanded, he will smite the great house with breaches, the little house with clefts. 8:8. Go to 8:8.
1:1's earthquake.
Oh, does it say earthquake? 1:1, right at the very beginning. I skipped that because we already read that. Oh yeah, 2 years before the earthquake. Okay? 2 years before the earthquake. So it's written before the earthquake comes. 8:8, it says, shall not the land tremble for this, and everyone mourneth that dwelleth therein, and shall rise up wholly as a flood. All right, by the way, where is the last and final earthquake taking place? Well, we do say that. What city is destroyed and broke into three? I think it's broken into three sections.
Babylon?
No, I think it's Jerusalem. And what is Jerusalem's name?
Sodom and Egypt?
Sodom, I think it's Sodom and Egypt. Yes, it's called Sodom and Egypt. And it states it, that Jerusalem is called Sodom and Egypt. Because that's just all gone corrupt. Sodom and Egypt. And it breaks into three sections. I wonder why in three sections? What are the three main religions there? In Jerusalem? I don't know, it just came to my mind. Christian, Muslims, and Jews. Aren't those the three people there? Oh, you want Jerusalem? We'll bust it up into three pieces. Is it kind of divided into three? Well, it's supposed to be the greatest earthquake that ever will take place, as far as I know. And you'll find that in the book of Revelation. And let's pick that up. We'll pick this up here and begin here next week. All right, and we're well over the time. Preaching at 15. And Starla's here, right?